Hey everyone, so on this week's episode of Make It with Calvin, I'm going to discuss a few key points that explain the pros and cons between printing in pieces and printing as a solid model. So right off the get-go, there are some obvious advantages and disadvantages to printing an item in pieces versus printing it as one solid model. The interesting one that I noticed right off the bat was in Simplify 3D, I noticed that printing in pieces actually turned out to be a little bit faster than printing as a solid model. So here's the time lapses of me knocking those parts out. Besides the interesting fact that it was actually a little bit quicker to print as flat pieces versus a solid model, was also the fact that the parts tend to be slightly higher quality when they're printed flat versus printed vertically. That is because instead of having layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer building up to make a vertical model, by printing it flat, all the printer's doing is it's just making a large flat part. Now obviously this is not ideal for every application and everyone differs. I did find that the print quality was actually very nice. The other advantage to this is, especially if you have a machine that has a z-axis that's a bit wobbly, by printing an item flat you can hopefully help eliminate the z-wobble, and if it is there, at least it's not going to be as noticeable. It's on an edge, you can sand it out a lot easier and probably save yourself some time there. Now, one of the disadvantages of printing in pieces is obviously the fact that assembly is required. Now, this is actually not always a bad thing, and here's why. At least in the model train community, we are notorious, and this is not in a bad way, for wanting to customize our models. And I think this is kind of the beauty of where a plastic kit and being in pieces is, you can very easily go, maybe I don't want that window there. Maybe I'll board it up. Maybe Timmy threw a rock through it, or they put a machine there and they needed to close it off. There's different things like that. And with something like this, by doing it in pieces, it allows you to very easily either make a door opened or closed or just not there, or say you want to do a custom one, you can very easily make your own. If you're selling it as a kit, you can keep a couple sets of custom, say, doors around. They all share a same, in this instance, side panel and chassis, so you don't need to print more of those. And you can make it very much a pick and choose operation where people can pick what they want and choose the end model that they get very easily. Also, let's say somebody wants a spare door or two. Very easy to throw those in as well when it's a bunch of pieces. So that's an advantage to it. I understand not everybody has the skills, the time, the patience, the know-how to assemble a model, but it does have some advantages. Clearly, it is not a cure-all for all situations. There are some times where I do feel, personally, it's just more worth it to knock the model out. So one piece, let's do that, and usually that's just because I want a proof of concept to double check. I like how something's going to work, and then I go from there. Now, one other thing to keep in mind that you probably noticed from the time lapse is this model had supports. Were they necessary? I don't know. I mostly put them in there just to show the stark contrast between the two printing methods, and there's nothing wrong with support material. It's just if you have a single extruder machine like I do, the problem with that is same material supports tend to leave a little bit of scarring. Thankfully, slicers and printers have come a long way, but it still doesn't always turn out the nicest. I have had prints done on a professional FDM machine with dissolving supports, and the quality of the prints is just incredible. I also went to that Ultimaker 3 event over at Autodesk the other week, got to see some finished prints, and wow, I was seriously impressed at what a dissolving support can do. It's amazing, but the problem is those dissolving supports are not cheap. You have the time to remove them, all that stuff. So just something to keep in mind. One other thing that's an advantage of printing in pieces is you can optimize the print orientation for maximum strength. This is obviously more critical on items where you need ultimate strength and it is worth it to assemble it, and it's just, that's what you got to do. Obviously that does not apply to every application. There are some times where doing that turns out to be the better option. In this case, the walls are somewhat flexible. It is because the door is not attached at the back, but it's still somewhat flexible. The comparable part, just by itself, trying to flex it, it's a lot stiffer. That's partly just because of the way the model is put together, but something to keep in mind. Lastly, if you are going to ship an item, being able to ship it as flat pieces can sometimes actually work out to be cheaper than shipping it as a whole model. That's because you have a lot more dead space in the box with a whole model, and some carriers actually charge volume-based pricing, which means the volume of the model, of the box I mean, actually helps set the shipping rate. Some of them do that, some of them don't. Makes total sense why they do though. It's kind of a carrier by carrier, case by case thing. So in conclusion, some questions to ask yourself are, 1, do I need this model to be in one piece when it comes off the printer because of a time deadline, or I just don't feel like assembling it? Then definitely go with a one-piece model or multi-piece, large assemblies, whatever works best for you. If you do have the time to print it in pieces and you have the files to do that, then give it a shot. You know, I think part of the enjoyment of a hobby is learning new skills, learning new things, and also trying things. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the plastic to build these was relatively cheap, and sure, it took a little bit of time, but in both cases, I just had the printer running while I did other productive things like maker coin building and cleaning my room, things like that. So obviously while the printer's running, that's time and energy that you're using, but thankfully we're not printing with like some crazy expensive filament here where if something goes wrong, it's going to be a problem. So I hope you guys enjoyed this trip into why my brain designs things the way it does. And if you enjoyed this, please let me know. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about your thoughts on designing models to be printed in pieces versus as one complete assembly. And by pieces, I mean, you know, this one's technically in pieces. It's just for the purposes of the video, I broke it all down into parts, which is how I designed it. And then I had the shell right there. So there's varying levels of it, but I'm talking extreme differences between the two. So hope that cleared everything up for you guys. Hope you guys enjoy this, and I'll see you here next time on Make It with Calvin. Oh, and a shameless pitch. If you guys want to support the show and have some awesome looking little keychain stuff, links in going to be somewhere on the screen down below. One of those deals. They're pretty awesome. I made it myself.